2 of my Rogue One supersized figure review for Star Wars Black Series. The four in the front here are going to be the focus of this review. Last time around we did a set of Rebels, and that was Jyn Erso, Galen Erso, K2SO, and Bodhi Rook. If you're into Star Wars Black Series figures or Rogue One in general, I got a link to that review right up here. I think that's definitely worth a look. So check that out if you're interested. But we're going to get these guys out of view here. And today we're going to be focusing on the Imperial hover tank pilot, the Scarif Trooper, director Orson Krennic, and as it appears in the Rogue One movie, his tactical security unit, a Deathtrooper. So I'm going to be going over each one of these figures one at a time, sort of with the exception of these two, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But just to get this figure review going, we're going to get these guys out of the way and start with the Deathtrooper. Now, as far as this figure goes, what I would say is that it is a completely unique sculpt to the other Stormtrooper types. Basically, every other Stormtrooper out there, the Remnant Stormtrooper, the chromed out Stormtrooper, the frickin' Sand Trooper, you know, and on down the line, the standard Stormtrooper, of course, are all based on the same Stormtrooper body. This one is a completely unique sculpt, and that is reflective of how he was portrayed in Rogue One. And the way I understand it is the director, Gareth Edwards, wanted some tall, skinny guys to portray these characters. So their appearance, in my opinion, is a little bit unsettling. And height-wise, this guy is definitely different from a regular Stormtrooper. Compared to, say, the Scarif Trooper, he's at least half a head taller. Definitely a little bit of a height difference there. But one way or the other, the director did want to give him a bit of a different appearance on screen, so that's what you ended up with right here. So taking a closer look at this figure, what you do have is some subtle differences in paint appearances. This is not all straight black. There are some subtle different tones. Very dark gray bodysuit here. You get these dark silver buckles and things like that, little paint applications here and there. You kind of have to look around to really see those details, but a little bit of difference there. You got a silver paint application on the jawline of his helmet here, on the crest or nose or whatever you want to call that. On the tusks, you have kind of a dark gray pair of dots, and also the visor. I'm not sure if that's picking up on camera, but they are actually kind of like a very dark gray. It definitely evokes something that is tactical or a little more cutting edge technology-wise than a standard Stormtrooper. And there are also some differences in the reflectivity of the plastic. As you can see here on the shin and the thigh, these are quite shiny, and they're picking up reflection from the studio lights I've got here. But then again, like with the bodysuit Under Armour, those are all like a matte finish, so not exactly sure how they did that. My best guess is that the armor is actually painted, and I think that's probably how it's done. But it does make for some nice subtle differences of tone and that kind of thing in this figure, so very nice touch. You definitely get some callbacks to regular Stormtrooper type armor here, so you've seen a lot of differences like with the front of the thigh piece and the shin and that kind of thing. Also along the forearm, definitely some similarity there. And some interesting other little bits here, like being a more tactical helmet. It has a little bit of what I would guess is maybe like a targeting visor right here. It's kind of a cool little touch. Again, with what I think is an environmental backpack on here. Same kind of deal as a regular Stormtrooper. As far as his accessories, well, you're looking at it. He comes with a tactical assault rifle and a little pistol here. And the pistol can be stored on the body on his utility belt, but it's just held in place by this little loop, which is kind of janky, seems a little bit cheap, but to be totally frank, this is actually pretty accurate to how he's portrayed in the movie. They don't actually have holsters. They do have little straps or loops or something like that. Couple things I don't really care for about these particular weapons is they do have kind of a dark brown tone to them instead of black or something like that. I don't know, it's just ordinary plastic. They're not painted at all, anything like that. Well, no, I take that back. This one does have a little spot of paint. That's a curiosity why they just did it in that one little spot there. But beyond that, just ordinary, regular old plastic. So nothing too fancy or special there for sure, and kind of mismatched color tone wise. So the rifle, given this character's body type and the shape and size of this rifle, was kind of nicely done though, because it can be positioned perfectly in the crook of his elbow here with his hand on the trigger. And it's a little bit of a tight fit. You really got to work with it because the fingers are really curled up and really tight, but you can get them on the underside of that barrel. One downside to that though, to me, is I think this is kind of a shortcoming of this figure. I feel like they should should have had this posable in a way that you could get his eye down the line of sight of the barrel like you would for somebody who's moving like a tactical, like a Navy SEAL, like a military commando or something like that. And you can't really do that unless you get a little bit creative. What I did find is you can prop his elbow way up there, kind of get a little bit of a line of sight thing. It's not perfect, but from certain angles, it will look like he's kind of looking down the side of his barrel, which is kind of a nice look. It's just an awkward angle. And that's another part of the issue. I guess we're kind of seeking into articulation here. The head articulation isn't all there. I mean, there's very little head movement. The neck is not double jointed, so he can't look down very far at all. Well, he can get his head down there like that, but he can't look up super great, and you really can't turn his head too far to the side at all. In other news, as far as articulation, it's mostly pretty good. Just a couple of shortcomings here. He does have kind of an older style pin joint in the knees, and he can't quite get like a 180 bend or whatever, but he could definitely get past 90, and that ankle can tilt quite a ways there. You got quite a good range of motion in the torso here, so he can turn all up and down. Only real downside with this type of figure, though, is being such a tall, skinny figure, you're not going to be able to get him in super dynamic poses without running the risk of having him tip over. And even right now, as you can see, he's definitely wobbling a little bit. But, you can get him in some pretty good poses, so definitely works as an action figure for sure. I like him. I'm not in the game of army building or anything like that. I will buy different variations of certain figures. Like, again, with the Stormtrooper, I've got a few in the works as far as that goes. For this particular figure, what I would love to do is be able to have a few of them as kind of a security unit for Director Krennic, but I'm not willing to pay a whole lot of money for them. If I could pick a couple more up for maybe 12 bucks or something like that, yeah, I'd definitely buy a couple more and set all those guys up on display like that. So, but one way or the other, we're going to go ahead and set this guy up with a rating. In case you're not familiar with my Star Wars rating system, this is a rating system of 5 categories with a potential score of anything between 0 to 5 points per category for a maximum potential of 25 points. All right, as far as the Deathtrooper, I think the details are really nice. Not 100% perfect, but they're very good. Articulation is good. It's a bit challenging to pose, I think. I think a better neck joint really could have resolved so much with this figure, giving him the necessary option to look down the barrel of his rifle without having his elbow cocked all the way up. Accessories are really good, but kind of plain. It's just regular, ordinary plastic, and it's even kind of mismatched as far as the tone. It should have been kind of like a dark gray or honestly black. My only guess there as far as that goes is they deliberately made it a different tone just to offset from the figure itself, who has a lot of dark gray and black and stuff like that in it. Quality is pretty good on this figure. I don't have any real complaints about it. It's made out of nice plastic, has a lot of subtle shades of gray and that kind of thing, contrast and black, as well as gloss versus matte surfaces, so no real complaints there. I think it's pretty accurate in its portrayal. Some of the characters in the movie did have more equipment, and one or two things, it seems like some of them did have like maybe a big ammo pack or whatever high up on their shoulder, and some flashbang grenades or something like that kind of on their torso and that kind of thing. But I could see why they wanted to steer clear of that a little bit, just to not have stuff that was like obtrusive for this guy being able to be posed and that kind of thing. Probably didn't want to bulk up this figure too much, so at least you have that tall, skinny silhouette that is evocative for this specific trooper type. Overall, I'm going to give this figure 16 out of 25. So that is a look at the Star Wars version of a Navy SEAL, the Imperial Deathtrooper. Moving on with this figure review. The security detail is going to march right in with Director Orson Krennic, and he's going to make his exit. Now, Krennic in particular is an awesome figure sculpt with about as perfect of a replication of the actor Ben Mendelsohn's face as you can get. Really well done. Now, as I'm aware, this is actually sort of like the second release of this particular figure mold. I believe there was an initial release where the face sculpt was kind of low quality and silly. Some of the older ones, like that Jen Erso figure, or he looked more like a Fisher-Price character, and Hasbro had stepped up their game or whatever, and then re-released this figure with a better face sculpt. And that's what this one is. I mean, the details on this guy are astoundingly good. It's uncanny. His hair color is pretty much spot on. Only thing I would say in that regard is there is an odd little bit of a noticeable seam in the head, kind of around the central radius of the coconut there. The eye detail is just so spot on. I mean, it's subtle and perfect. I mean, those eyes are definitely painted on, obviously, but it's so well done that it doesn't look like, you know, like a cheap manufactured toy or whatever. You've got some subtle details, like the color of his eyes are in there. He's got blue eyes. You could see his pupils in there, and even the highlight in the pupil. I mean, that's fantastic. And the lips are pretty subtle too, so that's pretty nice. As far as reused parts, I'm sure Hasbro got away with what they could. There's a little bit in here, I'm sure, and I'm not an expert on Star Wars Black Series figures. I'm still fairly new at this line, but for the most part, I would say it's mostly a unique figure. We can take a look here. And yeah, note for note, these are definitely Tarkin's legs. Still got that odd hollow bit there on the bloomer type officer pants, so that's a little bit of an odd touch there. Definitely gave him his own unique signature gloves for hands though, so that's pretty cool. Definitely got the Tarkin belt and lower shirt bit. Although here's an interesting one. So this little button right here on the belt buckle is actually reversed on Krennic, so that is an interesting difference there. Looking at it a little more closely, I mean, it's damn near identical of a sculpt, but it is a little bit different. They're going with the same, but not going with identical, at least in that case. Certainly appears to be using identical arms, and again, different hands, of course. A little bit of different sculpting in the upper part of the shirt there, so they are hewing to specific character details as they're portrayed on the movies and whatnot. Different colored badge, of course. Pretty much got the same collar sculpt, even though the necks are obviously different. So yeah, I would say Director Krennic is a little bit of a mishmash between reused parts and slightly repurposed parts to give him a mostly unique figure, and at the very least a screen accurate figure. So, but as far as the design styling, it is a great looking figure. I do dig the polished boots here. Again, those shiny gloves, the signature Orson Krennic look. Not so sure he ever takes these off in the movie. He may have taken them off in the Andor TV series, but I don't think so. Got a lot of subtle cloth texture on this figure. May be kind of hard to pick up on camera here, but definitely got a cloth texture there. A little bit of a rugged military officer pants look there. So you got this sort of pebbled look there. Definitely noticeable different texture between cloth and like polished leather parts. So very good attention to detail all around on this figure. Does even have some interesting bits on his belt too, so that is kind of cool. Don't know what these things are, but obviously that's something he's got to keep on his backside there. Got a holster for his gun. We'll take a look at that in just a second here. Interestingly, it's a molded in hook here. Is not functional, so I'm not sure what that's supposed to be for at all, but that's a nice little bit of detail there. And as far as his cape, this was a smart decision, I think, by Hasbro to go with a plastic one. I mean, it flows perfectly with this figure, and there are some other figures with a longish cape or tunic or whatever where it's kind of obstructive. Not so much in the case of this guy. Works perfectly for what this character needs to do. Definitely feels like it's got that weight, so he's kind of got his arms inside it, and you can see kind of the outline of his arms inside the cape there, so that's a cool look. Sits on there on his shoulders pretty nicely. Doesn't want to seem to fall off or anything like that. It's got beautiful cloth texture on it all the way around. You got some hemlines here. Not sure what these are, but they're sort of like a pouch or something like that. And yeah, if you really wanted to, you could have this be a second bonus figure. So you could have an action comedy team called Krennic and Capey. And I don't know about you, but boy, I think this fella needs to lay off the starch. Anyways, on to accessory details. Other than the cape, you get a pistol, which is nothing super exciting to write home about. I mean, it's nice sculpting and all that. Kind of bland plastic or whatever. It does have a little bit of paint application on there, kind of on the underside of the barrel and on the pistol grip. The holster, I would say, is a little bit of an oddity because the way the gun has to sit in there, it faces backwards. So his draw hand is actually his left hand. However, and I would say Krennic is probably left-handed, come to think of it. If you look at movie stills, this is accurate to the portrayal in the movie, so that is not a mismatch. As far as articulation, you got the standard bunch, nothing unexpected for this particular figure mold. He's using a lot of parts from other Imperial officers, so you're not getting anything unusual with this character for sure. Does have quite a range of motion with the knee articulation there, standard set of ankle tilt, all that kind of stuff. The elbows can only bend about 90 degrees, but you know, they do have elbow swivel, so a pretty good range of motion there. The wrist can turn as freely as they need to. They're both on hinges, of course, but they can swivel, so you can have him doing a crook hands kind of pose. He does have a couple of trigger fingers, which is kind of an interesting, most characters don't have that. Shoulder can rotate up about 90 degrees. Nothing too particular special there, but you know, definitely adequate for this figure. Neck has a pretty good range of motion. And if I didn't mention before, it does look like it should be a double neck, but it's not lacking anything as far as range of motion there. So he can get his head quite a ways up there. However, one thing that I would note here is quality of the paint application on the neck is a little bit lacking. Kind of wish they just went with straight plastic and just basically matched the head sculpt. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. They seem to have done that for the centerpiece, but then they painted the outside piece, so it's just like, why? Difference there, though, might be just kind of a different approach for how they decided to manufacture the figure. Deathtrooper is a little bit different. They actually painted her collar, but left her neck the same color plastic as her head sculpt, so... Oh, she's whispering sweet nothings in Director Krennic's ear. I am a scavenger. Yeah, so... So anyways, yeah, good range of motion. I would just say that the neck sculpt and the paint application is a little bit lacking as far as this character goes. One other cool thing about the way his hands are sculpted is you can reproduce that infamous scene. Supervisor Young spent 3 hours logged into your account. Shall we take a guess at what's on your browser history? Shall we take a guess at what type of dandruff shampoo you use? Yeah, at any rate, I do think his articulation, even if he's using some older figure parts, is definitely adequate. More than adequate, really, for what you need to do with this figure. But given the nature of his cross-draw pistol holster, I do think he should have at least been able to reach over and grab the grip of his pistols, so can't quite do that. A little bit of a butterfly joint or something like that probably would have remedied that. So not perfect, but pretty darn good. Just to demo that real quick, yeah, you can get his gun in his hand real easy. Definitely got the trigger finger thing happening there. Very good figure. I'm still holding out for a Cyril Karn, but one way or the other, we're gonna get into his rating. So details on Krennic are subtle and I think perfect. Articulation is adequate for this figure type. I do think he should have been given a little bit more of an elbow, butterfly joint or something like that so that he could reach over and grab that pistol. So when there's a minimum amount of accessories and that kind of thing on a figure, I think whatever is there, that is kind of on the figure designed to really make those features count. Didn't quite pull that off in this case. Overall, the figure quality is really good. I just wish they'd done something a little bit different with that neck. Maybe not paint it, I don't know. Painted the collar like they did with Deathtrooper. Seemed like that worked out a little bit better, in my opinion. The figure is pretty much perfectly accurate. They probably could have, should have painted the gun silver instead of like a cheap gray plastic, but that's ultimately a quality detail. So I'm gonna rate Director Krennic 20 out of 25. And that is my rating for Director Orson Krennic. Very cool figure. As far as Imperial officers go, yeah, there's a lot of kind of generic ones out there. This is a really good one. This is definitely one to pick up, so very happy with this figure. And moving on with the final lap of this review, we're gonna bring out the Heckle and Jekyll bunch, Scarif Trooper and the Hover Tank Pilot. If it's not already very obvious why I'm reviewing these two together, it will be in just a second. And the reason why is because these figures are damn near identical. So we'll get this gun out of the way for a second here. I mean, everything is basically identical. From head to toe. Well, not quite from head. Obviously, the helmet sculpts are a little bit different. The chest armor is identical. The arms, shoulders, down to the elbow, the wrist, and the whole bit, all identical. They basically reuse the same armor type and body sculpt for both of these figures with some minor differences. Yeah, obviously the thighs are the same cloth and everything, down to the same shin guards, same boots, essentially the same utility belt, at least on the backside. We'll take a closer look at that just a little bit. Same environmental pack here. Obviously the helmets are quite a bit different, so you definitely have that difference between these two. Paint applications are definitely different, obviously, color schemes and that kind of thing. The utility belts are, of course, different. The Scarif Trooper apparently has this big, bulky pack here on the side, and big old loop for its pistol. But on the backside, this, I assume it's like an oxygen canister or something like that. I'm not sure what that is. It's identical, but obviously from a different sculpted piece. And the Scarif Trooper's utility belt is also a little bit of like a skirt piece too. It's not just a belt, so slight difference there. But other than that, they're identical. However, that's not a bad thing, and we're going to talk about that for just a little bit here. As far as differences or things that make them good, one thing that I'll say about both of these is I really dig the paint applications and just the overall weathering effect. The Hover Tank Pilot, you know, he's basically supposed to be a white trooper, but he's obviously out in the field, and he got his suit a little bit dirty. So it's definitely this off-white color with a lot of like brushed in, and I believe this is actually even painted in. Kind of grunge look to it. Got a little bit of scruff and dirt and whatever on his mouthpiece here. So hopefully that has a filter on it, because he's sucking in some exhaust from the tank that he pilots or something to that effect, I'm sure. Beautiful weathering effect on both of these. Shin guards look great. One interesting thing, and I'm not sure why, for the Scarif Trooper, is the weathering effect on this guy. If you look at it real close, is actually kind of like a reflective gold paint. Not sure why they did that instead of just like brown or whatever. Maybe it just wasn't showing up well enough when they did the prototype or whatever, but yeah, he's definitely got some weather-worn paint applications. He's got his, what I assume is his rank designated on his shoulders and on his chest piece here. All kind of chipped up and weathered looking, whatever. Beautiful paint applications on both of these. And again, if I didn't say before, I really dig the helmet design for both of these. That is a tribute to the designers of the movie. They basically just replicated what they did, and they did it 100% accurately. Cool looking visors and mouthpieces on both of these. What's great is Rogue One came out about a decade ago, and they created some helmet designs that are straight out of old school Star Wars. Look like they fit right in with the original Star Wars trilogy. So kudos to the designers for maintaining that aesthetic. Beautiful sculpting on the hands, of course, just everywhere. I mean, there's nothing on here that I'm looking at that I'm going, this is detail that's missing that I don't like or whatever. One thing I'll say for sure that kind of stands out to me is, look at the thighs on these dudes. Man, these motherfuckers don't skip a leg day. As far as accessories, these are standard troopers, so they don't really come with a whole lot. Both come with a blaster, and that's it. And the Imperial hover tank pilot actually comes with a standard issue Stormtrooper blaster, so a little bit of a unique one for the Scarif Trooper. And he does have that strap holster or whatever. Kind of a nice touch in his case, at least. Both can hold their blasters and get their finger on the trigger really effortlessly. So as far as articulation, one thing I noticed straight away with the Imperial hover tank pilot, he was the first one that I took out of the package, is just how effortless he is to get into some really cool poses. Some action figures are a little bit of a struggle to get into some really cool dynamic poses. Some of them are just unbelievably intuitive and effortless. These two are of the latter variety. Very well done action figures as far as their posability and just like what you can do with them. I mean, it's just so easy to work with both of these figures. Deathtrooper is cool. As far as action figures and posability and whatever goes, these two are definitely better. And I don't think there's any need to go over every little bit of articulation on both of these figures, because you 100% get exactly what you need and more out of these. As far as action figure posability goes, these two, as far as I'm concerned, are top tier. So what if they're damn near identical sculpts? Very worthy of any collection for sure. The only downside that I can really think of, at least in context of this review, is basically with the head sculpt. When you get down in there and look underneath the helmet, the illusion kind of falls apart a little bit because there's nothing underneath there other than the ball socket kind of thing. So, but, you know, as far as the range of motion, whatever, you know, there's nothing to complain about. What an awesome pair of figures. I love these two. Be that as it may, we're going to have to move on to a rating with these guys. So again, details on these are very good. While they're obviously a lot of reused parts, they're damn near identical figures, of course. It's such a great mold that it's really well worth having more than one of these. Articulation is action figure perfect. So I've handled a number of Star Wars Black Series figures so far, about 2 or 3 dozen or somewhere in there. And a number of them do have kind of mediocre balance. In some cases, they might be restricted by plastic clothing or otherwise kind of difficult to pose. These two are spot on, awesome, and just about perfect as far as action figures go. And accessories, well, again, this is reflective of the fact that they're both standard issue troopers. They both came with a single gun, but the holsters and utility belts are a nice touch. And the quality is very good. There are a couple of odd bits like the visibility of the neck joint up inside the helmet, but I definitely appreciate the weathered paint effects and overall quality of the paint applications in plastic. Accuracy, again, is spot on. Nothing to complain about there. Both look like they were peeled straight off the screen. So for a grand total, I'm giving these guys 20 out of 25 respectively. So this is my part 2 of the Star Wars Black Series Rogue One series of the Imperial set that I have so far. And just to close out this review, we're going to line up all the characters here. So you got the Scarif Trooper, got the Deathtrooper, got the hover tank pilot, and director Orson Krennic. At any rate, that's all I've got today. More on the way, like I said, and thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, please take a moment to leave a like, leave a comment, something like that. Share it with a friend if you know someone who's into Star Wars Black Series, and anything that can help out my channel, because it does take time to put together these reviews, which in turn, of course, helps to keep my channel alive. We'll catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.
Where's a bloke get one of them fancy helmets, mate?